got chocolate ice cream all over my mouth. So, as the title states, I'm going to diagnose the left. So if you're a left-winger and you want to get an outside perspective, a very unique perspective, because all the perspectives you probably have are from people that share your ideology. So there's a bit of a bubble effect going on, right? So you guys are going to be head nodding on a lot of stuff. Some stuff you might disagree on, but fundamentally you're on the same page. So that limits the scope. You know, it's kind of like a parent's opinion of a child versus, you know, someone who is not related to the child, right? There's certain perspectives that the parent might actually take for granted, you know, but it stands out more to an outsider, right? A lot of left-wingers, you're around like minds. So there may be a bit of a blind spot and limit in your self-awareness. Unfortunately, the main critiques or perspectives of your ideology that you would be exposed to, it's going to be from three camps, which is the value of this particular video. The reality that it's coming from three camps, right? And I would be a fourth and a very unique and very rare perspective. So the three camps are going to be people that are, you know, left-wingers that, you know, share your ideology. So again, a lot of head nodding, yeah, Medicare for all, you know, housing for all, whatever, right? You've got the talking points that have been sort of fed to you by your thought leaders, that's been repeated by others that share your ideology. So that's perspective one that you get exposed to. Perspective two is the normie perspective, right? The normie, maybe centrist as well. So the issue with someone on the left is, again, common source of information, limited viewpoint, because they're sort of looking at the same stuff you're looking at. The problem with the centrist, the problem with the normie is lack, not always, I know some centrists might watch me, might disagree. There's some centrists that have a decent knowledge of the left-wing and right-wing perspective, and they still choose that they think in the middle is the right way, right place to be. The right is gone too far, too extreme, whatever, and the left is, you know, too extreme as well, you know. But that's going to be the exception. I think most of the normies are going to be ignorant of a lot of the problems going on because they're not paying attention. They're focused on their own lives. They're not really involved in politics that much. Their source of information regarding politics is coming from, you know, normie news, which is like CNN, MSNBC, right? So their vision is limited in scope because the information provided to them is limited from these mainstream sources. There's lots of things that they won't talk about. For example, you know, the Young Turks does a good job with mentioning one particular issue that will be an issue for a normie, and that is the lack of discussions about bribery, right? As the Young Turks call it, where politicians get bought off. You got these lobbyists and others that are, you know, a lot of money is changing hands behind the scenes. Some of it's visible. You can look at what's it called? Open, I forgot, but it's a source where you can see a lot of these donations. I knew there was ice cream on my lips, and you guys saw ice cream on my lips, you didn't say anything. But anyway, and these things influence the politicians in terms of their decision making, right? You are a major, you know, funder of my campaign, and then when you ask for a meeting, I'm not going to deny you. I mean, I want to run for election again, and I'm going to want your donations again. So I want to keep you happy. So I'm gonna listen to what you have to say, and you know, if I'm really ambitious, like many of them are, I'm probably gonna, you know, be a little bit conflicted in terms of when I legislate. In terms of, you know, if I legislate one way that harms someone that's a big supporter of mine financially. So I don't know, right? So that's your second source. So you have normie people that critique you guys and say you're too extreme, you're going too far. They'll be the ones saying, actually, they'll be repeating right-wing stuff and saying you're too woke. This wokeness stuff is too far. They'll talk about, you know, what are they doing with the kids in the school? So some of the right-wing narratives will have, you know, sort of infected folks that are centrist or normies, right? So that's going to lead some issues, you know, when these people are critiquing you or giving you the perspective. They're going to be giving you most times a very, very uninformed. Like, there's so much stuff they don't know that you need to educate them on. To, for example, they may look at some of the stuff you're saying as extreme. It's too extreme. This is not where the country is, and you have to let them know. No, polls show that this is not the extreme position. This is actually something that is very popular, but mainstream media is leading you to think that it's extreme, right? So a lot of education required. So they're not going to be able to give you really good, solid critiques, right? Because they lack the knowledge, right? There's so much stuff they don't understand about how this stuff works, and that's going to limit the value of their critiques. The third standard perspective you'll be exposed to as a left-winger is going to be the right-wing perspective. The right-wing's perspective on you is going to be even further from reality, because just like the normie can only come to conclusions based on the limited scope of information that they consume. CNN and MSNBC is only showing them this stuff, so their opinions about you is based on this, right? But you, as a leftist, has like much more knowledge. Now, your interpretation of that knowledge and your comprehension of that knowledge and your ideas and what you agree with, what you don't like, that's a whole other story. But admittedly, you're working with more information than a normie person who doesn't really pay attention to politics would be, right? But the right wing, most of their information about you is going to be basically lies, because they're getting most of their information from right-wing propaganda sources that will greatly distort the left-wing positions, right, for profit reasons, right? So a right-winger is going to be consuming right-wing media, and big part of their business model is find the most ridiculous, not unlike the Trumper interviews, right? Now, I gotta go to a Trump rally myself to see legit, because I don't trust none of these guys online, left wing, right wing. I don't care what your ideology is. This platform is just so many dishonest actors. I want to go to a Trump rally and see what's really going on. I mean, logically, the kind of person that would go to a Trump rally is part of a certain group of people that's not really representing, say the average voter. But still, I would still like to get a genuine view of, who really goes to those rallies, and potentially weed out any, bias where, for profit reasons, a left-winger goes to an event like that and looks for the craziest person because it's good for content and misrepresents them, right? If in fact that's what they're doing, that's what right-wing does as well. What is profitable is to find the worst actors, the worst examples of the left, and keep harping on it to make your audience feel like this is what the left is all about, right? So a great example of that, an excellent example of that, is defund the police, right? So the major movement on the left was essentially police reform, right? Police reform was the major thing that people wanted on the left, right? They decided to go with the stupid tagline of defund the police, but really police reform is what they wanted, right? So since police reform is actually very much needed and would be a good thing, the right wing has to misrepresent this, right? You're not going to make good money pointing out that the left has a good point, right? You always got to be anti-liberal. That is the business model, anti-liberal. Show how crazy and hysterical the left wing is, how their ideas are horrible and destroying this country, right? Open borders, blah, 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 CRT. That's what you got to do. So you can't talk about, police reform. You have to see, right? These guys are not idiots, right? Some of them are, but most of them are not idiots. You're smart enough to see that the left is pushing for police reform, but that's not going to get you views and clicks. So you wait until you find the most extreme view, the most radical view, the most ridiculous view, and you talk about that nonstop. So what was the most radical view? One of the most radical views around defund the police. Abolish the police, right? What was the thing about pigs fry them up like bacon? Trump loves that one. Loves to talk about that one. Right? So you have a movement on the left that wants to abolish police, right? That's not the main movement. Right? Let's do polls, and we're going to see that that's a radical position. Right? It's a radical position, has, in my view, some serious issues. So it's a perfect tool to make the entire left just look ridiculous. Right? You don't want to vote for Biden because if the left wins, this is what they're going to do, and there's not going to be any police. And they literally run ads like this. Like, you're going to call for the police and no one comes because they're going to abolish police. I mean, the reality is the Democrats gave us more police, more funding for police, right? And that's the problem. So when you're getting a right-wing critique, you're getting a critique from someone who's consuming the worst of our media. Our media is really, really bad in general. Right-wing media is absolutely the worst. So, I mean, getting a critique from someone who thinks that the left wants to abolish the police and they want, everyone to be worried about pronouns, and they want to have like, they're focused on like drag shows. Like that's the left thing. Like, we want drag shows for everyone. Like, that's what the left, that's what they're focused on, right? That is what's going to get you money, right? That's what's going to get you profitable. You don't want to talk about, you know, the left's desire for healthcare, the left's desire for, you know, things that really matter, things that if we got would be actually a good thing. That's tough. If your business model is anti-liberal, you know, you want to be talking about stuff that actually, you know, seems pretty good and has a lot of popularity, right? You want to focus on the worst of the worst. So, not going to get very useful information listening to a right-wing critique. Now, I want to be clear. I would never suggest that you don't listen to right-wingers. Oh, phone is overheating. I would never suggest that you don't listen to right-wingers because they don't have any valid critiques, or don't listen to centrists or normies because they don't have any valid critiques, right? So don't draw that conclusion. I'm not taking you there. I'm just pointing out the issues of the three primary sources of critiques. Now let's get to my critique. I'm not coming from the right, and I'm not coming as a centrist or a normie. I am someone who is in a unique position because I'm highly knowledgeable about the right-wing and left-wing perspectives and the policies that you guys are pushing for, the arguments that you guys make, right? And I am hardcore, you know, independent, so I don't have any allegiance to any tribe, right? And since I'm not in one bubble, like right-wing bubble, left-wing bubble, I'm seeing things that many of you guys do not, based on the sources that you watch. And also, a big thing is allegiance, because even if some of you will say I watch different sources, but if you have an allegiance to one of the tribes, it's going to limit your ability to comprehend and consume media, even coming from a variety of sources, right? Because you're going to have that bias where, you know, you're listening to a right-wing source and automatically you have this sort of negative, like, oh, he's racist, white supremacist, or whatever you think, right? If you're a right-winger, you listen to left-wing, like, these liberals, this and that, and they woke stuff and blah, blah, blah. So you're already kind of shutting them down because this is the other side, right? This is your political opposition. I don't have that issue. There's no, I mean, I'm not on a side, so, you know, the right is not like my opposition, the left is not my opposition. So I can observe as much of an outsider as is possible without some extreme situation. I do lean left, so there is going to be some level of bias because of that, but in my view, barely relevant, right? Just because of not only, you know, as a true outsider, but also as an analyst by profession and by just my personality. You know, my ability to analyze data is one of my key skill sets, so I have an edge there in terms of how I process things. So with that being said, with that really, really long introduction, here's my diagnosis of the left. I think one second. Actually, this video is getting too long. I'm gonna make this a two-part series. So this completes part 1 of 2 of my diagnosis of the left and what I think is really hindering them. I'm not gonna want to miss out on part 2, where I'm gonna get into my diagnosis and my observation as an outsider.